So the last video that he did, um, I thought it was really good because it was a video that I didn't think was gonna be like super like well. I'm not gonna say it wasn't gonna be super good. I was like, well, it's Left 4 Dead. Maybe it'd be more lighthearted than creepy out of everything. Turns out no. Turns out no. Uh, that was a lot more scarier. That was a lot scarier than I thought it would be. To be quite honest with you. So this is called The Horror of Server Blight by Marcelame. Same person that did the other one that we just watched right now. That did the Left 4 Dead analog horror series. And we're about to see what this is about. This is it. And I think it was also another analog horror series. It's if you think TF2 is just a silly hat simulator, with zero horror potential, then you clearly haven't seen the series I'll be covering today, Server Blight. Join me as I break down and analyze all 8 episodes of this SFM series. Okay, you know what? I liked his last video. You know what? I'm gonna leave I left the like right now. You just saw me, so we're gonna get right into it. Please go check him out. It's gonna be in the link of the description, as always, along with his channel. If you want me to watch any more videos, please leave them in the comments down below and tell me what you would like me to watch in the future. Please like and subscribe, and let's get into this video. I'm really excited to see what this is about.
In a tour. Noun.
A
A
tour?
filmmaker whose personal influence and artistic control over a movie are so great that the filmmaker is regarded as the author of the movie.
What? That I don't know if that makes sense or not. Does that make sense to y'all? Sorry, I don't know why it's not picking up this stuff. A tour. A filmmaker whose personal influence and artistic control over a movie are so great that the filmmaker is considered the author.
Filmmaker is regarded as the author of the movie.
I think I'm too smooth brain to like realize what this means, but who knows? Let's get right into it though.
Many filmmakers have been regarded as auteurs throughout history, whether it's Quentin Tarantino in his iconic and very graphic action movies, or Orson Welles in his masterpieces like Citizen Kane or the Paul Masson French champagne advertisement.
Action, please.
The what?
The French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence.
Though, of all the auteurs, none will
What?
ever come close to the level of greatness in my eyes as the legendary John Carpenter. Only a man such as him could make some of the most intense and blood-pumping action movies like Escape from New York, while also managing to make some
Never
of the
seen
most
'em.
iconic horror movies ever made, like, I don't know, Halloween.
Oh,
one of my
never
all-time
mind.
favorite movies made by him is They Live, which combines both of his specialties into one movie. However, there is one film that really stands out for the rest of John Carpenter's work. Yup, that's right. Elvis, the hit 1979
Ain't no fucking way this guy made Elvis the fucking movie.
film featuring Kurt Russell as Elvis. Okay, but on a more serious note, even though John Carpenter does specialize in horror, the gore factor in his movies are relatively mild. Like, if you look at any of his classics like Halloween or The Fog, all the characters that die in these films are pretty much just from quick stabs. The exception to this gore factor in his horror classics, however, is his stomach-churning 1982 film, The Thing. To be perfectly honest, for years I've actively avoided watching this movie, because the two main things I've heard about it is that one, it's disgustingly gory, but also, the plot is particularly disturbing. Picture this. You work in an Arctic research lab.
You know, I will say one thing about the thing that I learned. In the thing, they have a rule that they have to follow. And it's the only way that they can tell who's infected with the thing, because the thing can take over somebody's body and that person's already dead and they won't know. It's basically who's the imposter. Or it's basically Among Us. So what it is, so that the rule is do not have any like contact with anything. Don't drink from the same bottle. Don't eat the same food. Don't do nothing. Don't share anything because it can That's how it transmit itself to you and affects you. And in one of the scenes, I believe I can't remember who it was. Um, it was what's his name? The voice actor of Spawn. You know who I'm talking about. The voice actor of Spawn. I'm having such a brain fart because he's like my favorite actor. He also plays the Shadow Man in Princess and the Frog. Are you ready? He does that song. And his character was actually infected with the thing. So because one, you can't see his breath in the cold. This is spoilers, by the way. Sorry. You can't see his breath in the cold while there's two characters. It's him and another character, the main character, I think. They're talking in like at the outside, keeping guard, and one of the characters, they were drinking one, like he had suspicions about him, and so he had the idea of, you know what, how about you have this drink? Because the thing doesn't know that you can't share anything. The thing does not know that. The thing does not know, do not share drinks or food or anything like that. So it's like, I could go for a drink and takes the bottle and he drinks it straight up and you don't even see his breath. That means he's already dead. And the thing is already taken over his body. And that's the indication of telling you who the thing is in the movie. I know I butchered the explanation of that, but the main thing is for the thing that you can tell who the thing is early on in the movie before it's even revealed.
When your team gets disturbed by the sounds of a Norwegian helicopter chasing a dog
Voodoo,
before the
voodoo, voodoo,
helicopter
voodoo, voodoo,
crashes.
voodoo, voodoo,
After
voodoo,
rescuing
voodoo.
the dog, your team investigates a nearby Norwegian base
Peter.
only to discover everyone dead and some burnt remains. After doing an extensive autopsy on the burnt remains, it's revealed that this thing can assimilate whatever living beings it comes in contact with.
Oh, great.
And even more disturbingly, it's also revealed that there's a high likelihood that the very least one of the team members has already been infected by the thing.
Yep,
It's trying
told you.
to blend in. And now, you don't know who's human and who's the thing. That's pretty much what the plot of the thing is. And when I saw it for the first time,
I need to
was
watch it.
terrified, disgusted, but also I was very fascinated by the film. The concept of assimilation has always been such an intriguing and disturbing concept for me when it comes to horror films and media in general. Films such as The Blob or Invasion of the Body Snatchers have always been super fascinating.
Dude, Invasions of the Body Snatchers is actually horrifying. And if you haven't seen the movie, like it's like fucking 50 years old, dude. Go watch it or something. Basically, the ending of that movie, Earth loses. The Body Snatchers win. And it's a dark ending because it literally they don't even hide it anymore. It literally just tells you like the way that they do it is that they just like they stare at you and then they scream and one starts screaming and pointing at you because you're the only one that isn't infected and you soon will be, and every single person that is around you stops what they're doing simultaneously, snaps their head towards you, points and starts screaming as well, like for like the last minute of the movie before the credits hit. And that's when they realized the entire Earth has been taken over and humanity lost. This is the one movie that I think, the one movie I've seen where the villain actually wins. And like humanity loses. It's insane. It's a really good movie. Go watch it.
And disturbing to me. And the thing that really sucks is that there isn't much in the realm of horror media that covers the topic of assimilation. And honestly, I find that to be really heartbreaking. And
another one that isn't like super, like isn't really super sought after in the horror space, psychological horror, dude. I am a fucking whore for psychological horror. Oh my god, dude. If you give me a fucking game or a movie with psychological horror, oh my god, I will fucking love it. There's a book called Gemini. It doesn't start off as a psychological horror, but it starts off as a thriller. And only then, afterwards, as soon as you continue through the book, it becomes a psychological horror, and it becomes a thriller with psychological horror, and it just gets even more fucked up, dude. It's so good. Oh my god, I can't express how much I love that book. I still have it to this day. Ah, dude, I'm a whore for psychological horror.
Honestly, the few pieces of horror media out there that does cover assimilation just doesn't do it like John Carpenter.
Actually, I think that's why I like analog horror, because it's mainly what I always search for. Psychological horror, in a sense. It's so cool. Oh my god, dude, you have no idea.
It's a thing. Or, at least, that was until I discovered a certain series on YouTube. It all started just like any other day where I'm eating lunch watching some Fat Magic videos when I see him I recommend a video titled SFM Horror, The Empty Server. Now, I usually indulge a bit into watching SFM creepypasta animations, so I initially didn't think too much about it, thinking it would just be something corny like an evil haunted empty TF2 server where the engineer with hyper-realistic bloody eyes shows up and smiles evilly. However, after watching this video, I became deeply invested in this horror series, ServerBlight.
The hell is ServerBlight? What the fuck? No, oh, I was about to I was about to say, it's like, hold on a minute, what the fuck is that? Is that what I think it is? Is that a Pinor? No. It's a big ass hand. What the fuck, dude? You gotta drop your only weapon.
ServerBlight really stands out
Man,
compared to
fuck
other
that.
TF2 horror-related content because it manages to stay true to the source material while also managing to make this ridiculous hat simulator legitimately scary. It's why things like Hoovie Dundee and Emesis Blue are some of my all-time favorites when it comes to TF2 horror. They're scary while also remaining very faithful to the source material. The other aspect about ServerBlight that makes it stand out so much to me is for the same reason why I went on that Yap sesh about John Carpenter and The Thing. To me, this entire series evokes that exact same feeling of dread and disturbance that The Thing made me feel. The fear of not knowing who is and isn't assimilated. The dread of what will happen when it gets you. And the disturbance of seeing someone that's been assimilated. And even though the series doesn't have the gore that The Thing has, trust me when I say that this series will make your stomach drop. But do you want to know what makes my stomach drop? It's the knowledge that you haven't subscribed yet! You want to subscribe so badly?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Subscribe.
Okay, seriously, please do subscribe. It helps out way more than you realize.
It does.
And while you're there, be sure to like this video. It lets me know you want to see more content like this in the future. Anyways,
go check them out too.
Enjoy the video.
But subscribe.
Consider being a channel member to see videos early. Thanks. At the time
you can do that too if you want to.
5, technically 7 official installments of the ServerBlight series.
That was technically
and I
8.
strongly urge you to check them out yourself before going any further. Be sure to show the creators lots of love and support. They've clearly worked their asses off on this.
You know what? After this, we might try that
Series, and they've definitely earned every little bit of praise they've gotten. The link to the playlist with this series will be in the description down below. With that out of the way, the story of ServerBlight begins with the empty server. This video starts off fairly unassuming, with the protagonist of this video, Dixalot, joining a Thunder Mountain game.
Dixalot.
Where we see many typical TF2 interactions. You know, like a guy rudely telling you to game end yourself when you join the game, or a spy randomly running off a cliff, or a scout who can seemingly control his facial expressions letting you shoot him? Alright, something definitely feels off about this server. However, after being irritated by how empty and boring the server is, Dixalot discovers he strangely isn't able to disconnect. I feel like it's also worth knowing an easy to miss detail here. As Dixalot is complaining about the server, we see a heavy ragdoll which ends up despawning. What's notable about this detail is that in between the shots of the ragdoll being there and it despawning, we can faintly hear the heavy say in a distorted voice, After noticing the payload's almost capped, he heads on over to presumably finish the round, but then he gets sidetracked when he hears footsteps inside of a building. Inside, Dixalot finally comes face to face with the person that's been telling him to game end himself since he joined the game. An engineer moving like a person instead of a video game character. After coming face to face with this engineer, we discover that he wasn't trying to be a prick. He was actually warning him. But before he could explain any further, he sees something behind Dixalot and runs off with his tribalman Shiv. When he turns to see what's behind him, we're greeted with a very unsettling sight. A Heavy's arm poking out from behind the doorway, and he has, 6 fingers.
Ooh.
Whatever this thing is also tries to lure him towards it using a distorted medic voice line. The thing that makes Dixalot's fight or flight really kick into full gear, however, is when we see whatever this thing is quickly move all 6 of its fingers. And honestly, can you blame him? I'd also be running like a bat out of hell if I saw that. Especially if it were to happen in what I thought was just a normal TF2 game. When Dixalot runs up the stairs in the building he's in, we see the engineer's game ended himself. And
don't let it take you alive.
Blood, don't let it take you alive.
Oh, that's haunting.
This, he realizes he needs to do what that spy did at the start of the game. And runs like hell. All the while, the entity that was behind the doorway runs after him in hot pursuit. In this pursuit, we only get to see bits and pieces of what the creature that's chasing after Dixalot looks like. But of what we can see, it seems like a mass of several characters into one being. Right before it seems like the mass of bodies reaches Dixalot, he just barely makes off the cliff on the map, where he jumps off and is then able to disconnect.
Bro, I don't know why I was holding my breath for that. Like, oh shit, this is really good.
The episode then ends with a shot of part of what this entity is, where it seriously just looks like a cluster of characters with stretched out limbs. And, of course, the game crashes. For the first installment, unsurprisingly, things are a bit vague. However, I'll try to analyze this to the best of my ability. First, I'd like for you to take note of every player name in this installment, and all future installments, as they may or may not be relevant throughout the series. Second of all, let's just cut to the chase and address the elephant in the room. This thing. The Server Blight. Here's what I can discern from it so far. It seems to be sentient, and it seems to like to toy with its victims. Not only that, but it also seems to be able to stop players from disconnecting. And it almost seems to be able to drag the players into the game somehow. Wait, how's that even possible? Like, do their bodies get, like, sucked into the game? Or do their consciousnesses get dragged into the game?
So, like,
That's
Soma.
such a weird word to say, consciousnesses. What happens to the player themselves if they get caught by the Server Blight? Like, it's very apparent and heavily implied with the Heavy's ragdoll and voice line that the Server Blight is made up of multiple characters, and it's probably not too far-fetched to assume it's sort of like a gray goo that adds players to itself. But what happens to the player themselves? Part of me almost thinks that maybe the victims are sentient and aware of the situation they're in right now, as most of them seem to be screaming for help. Also,
they are screaming for help.
A bit interesting that I noticed after watching this installment a couple of times is that the Server Blight seems to only be made up of slower characters and characters with bad mobility. I mean, sure, there's definitely a demo man and soldier in there. But like, be so for real for a moment. If you realize you suddenly got dragged into TF2 in the middle of a gaming sesh, and you see an Eldritch abomination barreling towards you,
yeah, I'm fucking running.
Instinctively rocket or sticky jump away? Cause I highly doubt it. That's not how fight or flight works. You'd probably either freeze up, run like hell, or start shooting at it. And if you were to run like hell as soldier and demo, something like the Server Blight could catch up pretty damn easily. Point being, I believe whatever the hell the Server Blight is more than likely started in this exact server. And it's only just getting started, gathering bodies by targeting the easiest to catch classes. Cause, you know, I didn't hear any scouts or spies scream for help in that mass of bodies. And wouldn't you know it, a scout and spy were able to evade it. Though, I also didn't hear any engineers or snipers, neither of which are known for their evasive abilities. So, maybe my theory of the Server Blight going after easy to catch players is wrong. I don't know. Maybe we can get some more answers in the next installment, Migration. This installment opens immediately after where we left off, right after Dixalot jumps off the cliff and disconnects. And we're introduced to our new protagonist, a free-to-play engineer named Johnny Danny 12. Is it Johnny Danny? Joni Danny?
Johnny Danny.
What the hell kind of name is this? Immediately after loading into the game, we see, suspiciously in the chat, the engineer from the last installment, Gilly, just saying, "I'm having so much fun." It's also worth noting that every time he says this, we hear a meaty ragdoll sound and something hitting the environment. However, Johnny Danny, being the classic oblivious free-to-play not caring about anything in the world, brushes us off. After walking outside and seeing the payload almost capped, he does probably the most free-to-play thing ever and builds a sentry without ever making a dispenser. Like, Dude, you picked up an ammo box. You can make your dispenser. Stop upgrading your sentry.
What?
Honestly, I just love how realistic this portrayal of free-to-play is. Pre-2020 mass meeting of all free-to-plays. Dude is just in his own world, low-key, not giving a single damn about the guy spamming the same message over and over again in the chat.
Are there any bad
However,
guys?
Johnny Danny finally ends up giving in and investigates the weird thumping sound he's been hearing. And he ends up discovering the source of it, which ends up being the engineer we saw from the last installment, slamming his head onto the floor with a smile on his face.
Oh, fuck.
Or is he? Hey, Vsauce, Marcy here. Look at the crack in the floor here. See that? That is almost definitely an arm moving around. It actually seems like this arm is controlling Gillysuit. In other words, this is bait, and Johnny Danny took it. Once the server light reveals itself,
oh, it's used it as a puppet. That's this thing is smart. That's fucked up, dude. Oh, it's using the dead body of Gillysuit as a fucking puppet to lure people. That's fucked up.
Johnny Danny initially starts to run away, but somehow he managed to disconnect right before it got him. Or did he? Hey, Vsauce. No, I'm not doing the same thing twice within the same minute. But really, did he actually manage to disconnect before it got him? Because, disturbingly, after Johnny Danny disconnected, the server blight then says... After that, every single player in its mass disconnects, including Gillysuit and the scout Dixalot headshotted. Well, this installment definitely has some disturbing implications. This is the first time we've seen the server blight using the chat instead of using voice lines. To me,
what if he knocked his power out?
And learning quick, too. It even seems to be learning how to lure players into it a little bit more effectively. This time by using Gillysuit as a puppet to create enough noise to alert Johnny Danny.
Horrifying.
And while we're here, let's talk about Johnny Danny real quick. First of all, how in the hell did he manage to disconnect? I have two theories, but I think one is a little bit more likely than the other. My first, less likely theory is he alt F4 to shut off his computer. Now, the reason why I think this is less likely is because I don't think that would cause the server blight to follow him. The more likely of the two is that the server blight let him disconnect just so he could learn how to leave the server and presumably spread to other servers. Hence why it said thank you after he disconnected. Also, speaking of the server blight disconnecting, I have a bit of an interesting theory with this scene. I have a bit of a feeling that the order of the players to disconnect here might be related in some way to the order of the people that have been assimilated by the server blight. Now hold on, let me cook. I got two main reasons why I feel this way. My first reason being that the first player to disconnect was an assimilated medic. And as we see in both the empty server and migration, the only merc that we've heard doing something other than screaming and crying for help is the medic. So that almost more than likely means that whoever this medic is was probably the origin or patient zero of the server blight. Now, the other reason why I feel the order of the players that disconnect has to do with the order of the players getting assimilated is because of the last three players that disconnect. Direction Z, Gayfer, and Gillysuit. Now, we know who Direction Z and Gillysuit are, but who's Gayfer? Well, it's probably the heavy Dixalot saw despawn. Think about it. Let's say the server blight was waiting in the spawn room for people to respawn. Dixalot snipes Direction Z, he can't disconnect even though he's dead, and is forced to respawn right where the server blight is waiting for him. Now, we see that this heavy has died recently, since we see his ragdoll and there's the ammo pickup next to his body. And even though his death wasn't in the kill feed, there's definitely time in between Dixalot walking from spawn and the area with the heavy's body, so we could assume he died during that travel time. Now, once again, much like Direction Z, the heavy who's presumably Gayfer couldn't disconnect even though he died, so he respawns and suffers the exact same fate as Direction Z. And then of course, we know Gillysuit was the last one to be taken, since he game-ended himself right before Dixalot disconnected. So, assuming my theory is correct, then we also know he's potentially the patient zero of the server blight. That being someone going by the name The Real Kid. But that's just a theory. A game theory. Okay, but on a more serious note, when I saw this installment, I wholeheartedly thought at the time that this was the end of the series. A dumb free-to-play somehow managing to accidentally save all the victims of the server blight by pressing alt F4. But oh, how wrong I was. Things are about to get a whole lot more sinister in the next installment.
Let's fucking go.
Titled Server Blight. This is definitely one of the more interesting ones to me, as it's a bit of a slow burn compared to the other installments we've seen up until this point. This installment opens immediately with a proper typical TF2 interaction. The enemy team capping a point and a Grease Lord Pyro BMing after killing a medic, named Hectoron. Also much like a typical TF2 game, the medic Hectoron, real name Matt, feels the need to narrate every single damn thing through his mic, where he tells his friend Dixalot, real name Aaron, to play Soldier. Now, for the sake of simplicity, for the rest of the video, I'll be referring to these guys by their real names. Cause you got me fucked up if you think I'm going to be saying Dixalot for the rest of the damn video. After Aaron switches to Soldier, we see an intense, normal TF2 game. And holy shit, Aaron sucks hot ass at Soldier.
No, real shit, what the fuck?
Kill. Finally, Jesus Christ! Okay, yeah, even Matt realized Aaron sucks ass at this game and decides to just pocket the free-to-play Heavy, who absolutely mows down the enemy team, eventually leading the team to victory. Also, totally unrelated side note, but I seriously gotta stop and glaze this series real quick. I absolutely love the cinematography and camera work in these scenes, and in the series in general. Like, not to sound like a total nerd, but as someone who's currently studying film, it brings me such joy to see like textbook examples of camera shots and film techniques I've learned in school used in the series. Like, the use of the handheld shot technique during these action shots are just, mwah, chef's kiss. Okay, sorry for nerding out so hard, back to the spooky stuff. After Aaron learns how to killbind and Matt whines about how they only have one teammate and they should just play casual, suddenly a bunch of people join the game.
Oh, fuck.
More specifically, the
Ghillie
Server Blight. Notably, the first one joined was none other than Johnny Danny, which confirms that the Server Blight managed to latch onto him right as he left the Thunder Mountain game. However, there's also some new names, implying that the Server Blight has been terrorizing multiple servers in between this installment and Migration. After noticing Ghillie Suit joining the game, Aaron freaks out and says they need to leave immediately. But of course, neither of them are able to disconnect. And despite Aaron's panicking, Matt reassures him that in the worst case scenario, they'll just alt F4. And they ultimately decide to try and win the game to show what Matt assumes are hackers who's boss.
Nah, no. I'll be like, dude, switch out of medic. And just persona. Just do it so we can get the fuck out of here. I don't want to deal with this motherfucker again. Dude, I would have deleted this fucking game if I saw that bullshit again.
So, after getting the lone heavy on their team, Scuba Master, to agree to the plan, they all roll out, only to discover that the entire server is totally empty despite Red Team being full. Once Aaron and Matt capture the first point, Matt notices a scout running up some stairs and decides to run after him with his Uber saw for some Uber. Is he stupid?
Oh my god.
An Uber saw would easily lose a 1v1 with the scout. Not only that, he's extra stupid for this because the scout seems a little bit familiar. Our suspicions are confirmed when we see in the kill feed that the scout he chased after was none other than Direction Z, the scout that we saw from the first installment.
So
regardless,
they got
Matt
him
still
too.
seemed to get the kill and presumably some Uber. And right as Aaron checks on him, they both hear someone shooting a shotgun. Despite this, they decide to keep pushing the payload, and once they hear the shotgun again, they decide to check up on Scuba Master. Though, right after deciding this, Aaron looks off in the distance and sees the deformed body of the scout Matt killed, running towards the third point. After Matt notices Aaron staring for too long, he snaps him out of it and encourages him to keep moving. Once they make it to the caves, they find Scuba Master eerily staying still, and once Matt calls out to him, Scuba Master ends up repeating what he said at the start of the match. Not only that, but we also see something pretty disturbing that we haven't seen until now. A hand sliding into Scuba Master's mouth, almost as if there's something now living inside of Scuba Master. Also, an interesting detail I think is worth noting here is that once the hand goes fully inside of Scuba Master, his messages in the chat say that he's dead. Well, regardless, after the hand goes down Scuba Master's throat, he begins chasing after the two while screaming for help and yelling at them to run. And right as he has the two cornered, Aaron quickly calls for a vote kick on Scuba Master. And right before he catches them, the vote gets passed and Scuba Master is kicked. After that near-death experience, Aaron tells Matt that they need to jump in the pale final to escape from the game. So they ultimately decide to stop trying to cap, and instead make a mad dash for the last point. On their way over there, they see a demo man bashing his head against the wall, and right as Matt is about to attack him with his Uber saw, Aaron stops him, saying it's a trap. So the two keep moving on towards last. As they pass Red Team spawn, they end up finding none other than Johnny Danny outside laying in the snow, delirious and unaware of his surroundings. Although most of him is lying outside, we see his leg is stretched all the way to inside spawn, where we see an unsettling red light emanating from inside. Feeling bad for the free-to-play, Aaron decides to put him out of his misery. But right as he's about to shoot, we discover it's another trap, and the server blight starts to leave Red Team spawn. Aaron then immediately realizes his mistake, and both his fight and flight instinct kicks in, where he shoots at the server blight before running like hell. Also, why does Matt Loki just not give a shit about the Eldritch abomination that's—
I know, right? He just fucking ran.
He's just kind of standing there.
He's like, what the hell are you looking at, dog?
Regardless, the duo start running like hell, and that bait demo also joins in on the chase.
Oh, ew, no.
Pretty easily. Geez, Aaron, why didn't you have that
oh.
kind of accuracy during the match before this? Interestingly enough, after blowing the demo apart, the Serverblight stops his pursuit of the duo and seems to drag the Gibbs of the demo away, presumably to rebuild him. Once the duo are in a safe spot, Aaron reflects on what just happened, realizing he just fell for bait, and that the Serverblight's learning. And weirdly enough, all Matt can say in response is just,
"What?"
in the exact same tone of voice, in the exact same way.
What?
Wait a minute. Aaron also mentions that the Serverblight pretends to be a player and repeats the exact same voice lines as heard. And once again, all Matt can say in response is,
"What?"
Realizing something feels off here, Aaron turns around, only to make the horrifying discovery that Matt's
no.
voice icon isn't aligned with his player model. After signally noticing Aaron staring above him, Matt, or rather, the thing pretending to be Matt, looks up and discovers its slip-up, and finally drops the facade. Although initially horrified by this revelation, Aaron's survival instincts kick in, and he makes a mad dash for the pit on final, where he ends up successfully rocket jumping into it. After apologizing to Matt, Aaron then disconnects, where we see a partial shot from inside the red team spawn, where we hear all the victims of the Serverblight screaming. Notably, we also see the red pyro that is running towards Aaron while he's making his mad dash to the pit, running back towards spawn. I feel like this could mean that he's going back to add himself back to the main master of the Serverblight. The installment then ends with the thing wearing Matt's body retracting its fingers and mouth hand, and having a sinister grin at the sight of new players joining the game. Sheesh, what a loaded episode.
What the fuck?
Something I really liked about this episode is just how reminiscent this installment feels to the 1987 film Predator. In case any of you aren't familiar with this film, basically, much like this installment of Serverblight, the film ends up misleading you, making you think it's going to be a testosterone-pumping action film. However, after the initial war film action scenes, it quickly turns into a horror film as the GIs get plucked off one by the Predator. Yeah, I know, here comes a film student yapping about films for the umpteenth time. But like, can you blame me? It's
I
a
like
storytelling
films,
element
though,
I
so-
seriously don't see that often in media. And I really fuck with it so heavy. So hell yeah, I'm gonna absolutely glaze it when I see it. But I'm getting a bit sidetracked. As I said at the end of the last section, this one is much more sinister than the previous installments, and we can definitely see it in the form of the Serverblight stringing Aaron along, pretending to be Matt for such a long period of time. Assuming you already saw the series on your own before watching my analysis of the series, if you're paying attention, after killing Direction Z with the Zuber saw, Matt was only saying things they said on the mic after the Serverblight joined the game. Here, let's compare some of the instances of when Matt says something over the mic and when Blight Matt says something.
"Yo, Heavy, you with us? Yo, Heavy. Aaron, you good? Aaron? What? Didn't you say...
What?
What?
Oh.
Why can't I leave? Stop, dude.
Now, this last clip is both extremely concerning,
dude,
but also extremely noteworthy for multiple reasons. Obviously, one of the most concerning things is how the Serverblight's now learned to use voice chat, and we can even see it figure out how to create new phrases using the voice chat within the very short period of time it's had using it. The main example of this being when Blight Matt says, "can't leave." Matt never actually said the term "can't leave" during the time he was himself. However, he did say,
"What the fuck? Why can't I leave?"
Which means that the Serverblight's learned to string together words to create new phrases. Also, while we're talking about Blight Matt, I find it very strange
this
that
thing
the
is
Serverblight
learning
decided to string Aaron along for so long, making him think that Matt was himself. I'm having a bit of a hard time trying to figure out why it didn't just let Scuba Master get him, or just get Aaron himself when he wasn't looking. My best theory as to why this is that the Serverblight gets some kind of sick kick out of causing terror and psychologically screwing with its victims. And honestly, it also seems like it still screws with its victims even when they're a part of it, as we saw with Johnny Danny being used as bait.
Poor Johnny Dan.
Ultimately, he was just bait, and there's definitely a non-0% possibility that it was just a Serverblight pretending to be Johnny Danny. However, I'm of the belief that this is really Johnny Danny talking, and that he's in a state of delirium likely due to the Serverblight attaching itself to him. When we get to the next installment, it's going to heavily back up this point of mine, but we still have more to analyze and break down here, so hang on for just a moment. There's like 2 or 3 more things I really want to focus on in this installment before we move on. One of the more notable developments of the Serverblight is that it no longer seems to be staying as a single writhing mass anymore. And what I mean by this is that up until this installment, the Serverblight's remained as one single clone of players. But now, it seems to use players sort of like drones now, as we've seen with players like Direction Z or the demo hitting his head against the wall. Although it's not totally explained how this works, something tells me that the hand inside the mouths of Matt and Scuba Master has something to do with it. And speaking of Scuba Master, the sequence of his final moments are a bit interesting to me, for 2 main reasons. The first reason being that it's very interesting to me how the moment he has his hand fully go into his mouth, his messages in the chat say that he's dead. I know this is a relatively small small thing, and is ultimately probably a bit insignificant to the overarching story and lore of the Server Blight, but I'm curious if this means that the moment the hand went fully inside Scuba Master's mouth, that's the exact moment the person behind Scuba Master had died, and that the Server Blight had fully taken over. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if you
That
think
could
I'm
actually
right,
make more.
which
That
I
could make
always
sense.
am, or if I'm reading a bit too much into the small detail. Now, as for the second reason why Scuba Master's final moments are very interesting to me, are in regards to him being vote kicked. As we already know, by this point, Matt is already won with the Server Blight, so then why would he vote yes to the vote kick? Honestly, I think that the most likely reason is that as nice as it would be to assimilate Aaron, the Server Blight is also smart enough to think ahead, and that kicking Scuba Master would make him another catalyst to spread the Server Blight to even more servers. I guess we'll just have to wait and find out, but holy crap was there a lot to unpack in this installment. The next installment is actually one of the 2 installments to make up the technically 7 installments remark I made earlier in the video. I actually almost skipped over this one because it's titled differently from every other video in the playlist, so I sort of assumed this was accidentally added, but boy how wrong I was. The next installment in the series is Puppet, a Team Fortress 2 creepypasta. But before we get into the next installment, I'm going to kill the entire flow of this video by thanking today's sponsor, me! Yeah, I just want to remind you all to drop a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far.
Do it.
Hey, you've watched this far into the video, so it's gotta mean you enjoyed it
a
little bit, right?
You know what? Oh, I really liked it. Yeah.
And also, hey, while I got your attention, be sure to check out my Twitter and Discord server to keep up to date with my upcoming video projects and my random thoughts I throw into the void. Please,
do it.
My Discord server is so dead. I'm begging you here. And the last thing I'll show before
I don't
we
have
get
a
back into the
Discord
video
server,
is
so
I got channel memberships. Members get the benefit of getting to see all my videos early, access to unique emojis, and access to exclusive community posts with in-depth
Spit
updates
on that
my
thing,
upcoming
chat.
videos. So consider being a member today. It helps out both me and the channel a ton. Okay, back to the video. Oh, also, once again, subscribe. Please? Unlike the previous installments, there really isn't much in regards to visuals for Puppet. It's mostly just gradual zooming out of what seems to be a sniper who is assimilated into the Server Blight, surrounded by multiple other bodies of people that have been assimilated, including Matt in Direction Z. This installment is a description of what all the people assimilated by the Server Blight are experiencing from the POV of the sniper. From the sniper's POV, he seems to have lost most of his memories, including what happened right before he got assimilated. The only thing he can see is darkness, and when he calls out, he realizes his voice isn't his. And when he tries to move, he realizes he's stuck in some soft room. Suddenly, he feels a hand starting to dig into his neck, and when he tries to move his arms, he realizes he's all deformed, with his right arm being too long, and his left arm being on the wrong side of his body. As time goes on, the hand digging into his neck starts to hurt more, as he feels a knee jab into his torso, and cold breath on his hand. Now, remember how I said that I'm pretty sure that when Johnny Danny was outside his spawn being used as bait, that I was pretty sure it was him talking and not the Server Blight talking? Well, the sniper comes to the realization that he's freezing cold. And when Aaron encountered Johnny Danny, he mentions that he was so cold. So this means that either the people assimilated by the Server Blight feel cold for some reason, or maybe it's got something to do with them playing on Snowy Coast. A map that, if you were in it in real life, you would probably also freeze your ass off. And I know the sniper is currently on Snowy Coast because of how this installment ends. Anyways, once the main mass of bodies hits the ground, everyone collectively cries out in pain, including the sniper. The sniper then sees a hole in the mass of the bodies he's in, and comes to the terrifying realization that he's in TF2. Now that he's been given more visibility, he discovers the gravity of the situation he's in, and sees a mass of red clothes and stretched skin all around him. As they move, he feels his body being rearranged against his will. And once the mass encounters a spy, he feels both the blight prodding at his mind, trying to force him to scream with everyone else, as well as something smiling behind his head. And while he tries to resist the prodding, he feels said entity smiling wider, like it enjoys him helplessly resisting. Then, as almost some kind of punishment for resisting, he feels what can only be described as a million pixels burning him all at once, forcing him to scream. We're then quickly shown the screen faces of several of the assimilated players, many of whom we the viewers can recognize, those being the demo who's hitting his head against the wall, Direction Z, Johnny Danny, our protagonist Sniper, and Matt. The only two I don't recognize is a pyro with a beanie and a default heavy. We're then shown a shot of Snowy Coast, with the Server Blight leaving the server. Unfortunately, unlike the other installments, I admittedly don't have much to say about this one, mostly because everything is already spelled out for us for this episode. Regardless though, there are a few things I'd like to talk about from this episode. First and foremost, who even is our protagonist for this installment?
I thought it was Dix a lot.
My best guess would be one of the people that joined the game at the end of the last episode. More specifically, the one named Headshot Fraudster. I don't think I need to explain why I think this is our protagonist. The name is pretty on the nose. Another thing I want to touch on real quick is, who is this Heavy and Pyro? The fact they're shown here means they've got to hold some kind of significance, right? Hey, so Future Marcy here.
Alright.
After rewatching the installment called Server Blight while editing this video, I'm starting to realize that this pyro is probably Drain Damage, the pyro that told Matt to KYS. Though I still have no clue who this Heavy is. Now, the last thing I want to briefly mention is the thing behind the protagonist sniper that was described as smiling. Well, yes, I'm almost certain this presence is almost definitely the server blight. I'm not really sure what it means that he felt it smiling behind his head. Does he mean it in a physical way or a metaphysical way? Well, maybe we can find an answer to that question in the next installment, Assimilation. Now, before we get into the installment, I should preface it by saying that this installment has some flashing lights in it. So if you have epilepsy or just generally sensitive to flashing lights, skip to the timestamp on screen or go to the next chapter in the video.
For your
With that out of
discretion.
the way,
But yeah, I'll put a timestamp in the my description so you could see, so you could skip it if you do have epilepsy. Your discretion is advised. If you do not have it, please skip ahead. Or if you have it, please skip ahead. If you don't, then join me.
This installment opens similarly to the one titled Server Blight, and by that, I mean it starts off by showing a normal TF2 game on Dust Bowl. As the camera pans over all the action, the camera eventually makes it to Blue Team Spawn, where we end up seeing the POV of the protagonist of this episode, a spy named Cyrenix. But not only that, we actually also get to see real life for the first time in the series, where we get to see Cyrenix in real life.
Oh,
and
hey.
also,
Why is he in a basement?
Side note, but where the fuck is he gaming from?
No, like real
Gaming
shit.
inside of a damn prison cell. What the hell, man? Okay, but on a more serious note, after sitting down, Cyrenix starts playing the game as normal, but right as he's getting ready to backstab the enemy medic, he hears something behind him and looks away, which ends up getting him blown up. Bro is literally throwing the game. He could have easily gotten that medic. It's also worth knowing here that Cyrenix feels a bit chilly after hearing that noise, which might be related to the server blight being nearby. Well, either
shit.
that,
Or he's in a fucking basement.
In a fucking concrete basement.
Nah,
Once
real
he
shit.
responds, we see someone in the chat say,
Underground.
"This is weird." And when Cyrenix gets behind enemy lines, he notices something feels wrong about the enemy team. And what I mean by that is that it seems like everyone's just sort of pretending to play the game. The engineer's mindlessly hitting a dispenser without any metal, the medic has zero survival instinct, and the heavy's just sort of mindlessly revving and shooting his minigun at nobody while thoughtlessly jumping in and out of cover. Though admittedly, I've totally seen this happen many times before, so maybe I'm just reading a little too into this. Cyrenix suddenly gets snapped out of his staring when he hears something behind him again, though this time it's in-game. However, when he turns around, he just sees a sniper, though it sort of feels like he can see Cyrenix despite him being invisible. After moving on behind enemy lines, Cyrenix looks behind him in real life, and although he doesn't see anything, I notice that the shadow here looks different than when we saw it earlier.
Oh,
What it
yeah.
means, I have no clue, because neither of these shadows are really that discernible. Once he stabs the enemy medic, he glances down at his hands, where he notices for just a moment that his hands are the spy's hands. Not only that, but when he starts getting weirded out, he feels someone touch his shoulder, where we see the heavy's hand touching his shoulder. However, when Cyrenix turns around in game, he sees a soldier watching him, who quickly backs off. Feeling weirded out, Cyrenix returns to the first point, and that's when he sees everyone on both teams staring at him, despite being invisible. And in response, he makes whatever the hell these faces are. Oh, and the heavy's just
Man, fuck that, dude. So that means that they are dying in real life.
casually chilling behind him too. After realizing that they can all see him, they all start chasing after him. However, he gets cornered when the soldier he saw earlier starts running at him from the other end of the choke point. So, in haste, he runs into a tunnel behind him, where he tries to futilely disconnect. And when he looks to his side, the room he's in has turned into the tunnel on Dust Bowl. Honestly, his room probably doesn't look much different now than it did before.
Yeah.
Realizing the server blight is still in hot pursuit of him, he keeps running, where he then comes to the decision that he's gotta capture the last point. So, when he makes it to the point, he steps on it, and an enemy is blocking his capture. Confused, Cyrenix looks around, unable to find anyone, until he sees on the ground an elongated thumb stretching out from spawn.
Doesn't look like a thumb.
This thumb ends up belonging to is none other than Scuba Master 96.
Oh,
Frozen in shock, Cyrenix can only watch in horror as Scuba Master slowly emerges from spawn, as all the other assimilated players catch up to him, all the while the Heavy's hands reach towards Cyrenix in real life. Now, what happens here is a bit hard for me to discern because of all the flashing glitch effects, but I think we end up seeing something pry open Cyrenix's mouth in real life and force a hand down his throat. As we see Cyrenix's player model distort more and more as hands reach out to him, this chaotic scene suddenly ends, where we see Cyrenix's lifeless body, with glossy eyes and blood coming out of his mouth.
God damn.
After that, the episode ends. Wow, so we
So-
finally get to see what it's like for a person in the real world to get assimilated by the server blight. And honestly, it definitely raises way
Kinda
more questions than
horrifying.
answers. So let's first discuss everything we learned about in regards to
Kinda
the real
horrifying,
person
I'm not gonna lie to you.
before we get into the various other aspects in-game that I want to discuss. First and foremost, one of the things I feel like is worth noting here is the physical manifestation of the Heavy in real life. or at least the metaphysical manifestation of it. Jesus Christ, I sound like a total nerd saying that. Throughout this entire installment, we see the metaphysical Heavy toying with Cyronix. From making vocalizations behind him to touching him, it seems like the ServerBlight isn't satisfied with just terrorizing people in-game. And speaking of this Heavy, something else that has me a bit curious is the shadow changing behind Cyronix. Now, I admit, I could totally be focusing on absolutely nothing other than a small oversight by the creators, but I'd like to think that this shadow has something to do with the Heavy. The only question being, what does it have to do with him? Neither of these shadows really resemble much of anything, but what do you think? Am I reading too much into it, or am I onto something here? Now, the last thing I want to bring up in regards to the Heavy is, well, the Heavy itself. Although it very easily could be just a random
creepy as hell
chosen by the creators, I feel like the Heavy has some sort of significance here. My only real theory as to why it's specifically Heavy has to do with the fact that Scuba Master is here. Maybe because Scuba Master is sort of the progenitor of the ServerBlight here, then maybe that's why the manifestation of the ServerBlight that attacks Cyronix is a Heavy. Also, this definitely backs up my theory from the installment titled ServerBlight, that by kicking Scuba Master, the ServerBlight can spread to more servers, since now, he's moving the servers independently from the mass from Thunder Mountain.
Fuck.
One last thing I'd like to talk about in regards to these real-life scenes, and this doesn't have anything to do with the plot at all, but like, I'm really impressed by how the creators managed to make Cyronix look, well, dead. Okay, wait, I just realized that sounds really fucked up to say out loud. Okay, but look, I guess what I mean here is that I'm really intrigued by how they managed to make his eyes look all glossy and empty. Like, either they had to edit his eyes to look glossy, which I think is really impressive, or they had to do some sort of costume work by putting some sort of contacts in his eyes, which I also think is really
both.
cool.
Yeah, honestly, that
hey,
would
leave me
be
alone.
really
I'm a film
impressive.
nerd. Special effects and costume work are some of the coolest things to me.
I will have to say, it is pretty impressive, like, the amount of, like, work that they put into this. Like, mixing real life with the, what is it, SFM? Is that what it's called? Like, the SFM animations and shit, dude, it's actually kind of insane, the amount of work that they're putting into it. Blending it together. And, like, this past one, sound is actually pretty insane, too. Like, all things considered. I'm not sticking my tongue out, this fucking damn camera. But it does now. We know what happens when the ServerBlight gets you, though. So basically, it does kill you. It does kill you. And this fucking, I don't know, this damn thing. I'm not sticking my fucking tongue out. I don't know why he's fucking doing that.
Alright, enough glazing for now. Let's talk about some of the in-game details we see in this installment. I think one of the most noteworthy things here is how the ServerBlights learned how to pretend to play the game. Albeit, not very well, but it's honestly kind of disturbing to me that the ServerBlights seem to have the entire red team pretend to be playing the game just to screw with Cyronix. Not only that, but the ServerBlights even making fake conversations with itself to sell the illusion of player interactions. Something else I found to be interesting here is how the ServerBlight is now able to see invisible spies. See, the reason why I say it's now able to see invisible spies is I'm fairly certain it wasn't able to before. If we go way back to the empty server, we see the spy named Brodolphin uncloak before jumping off the cliff. So that could mean that Brodolphin evaded the ServerBlight on Thunder Mountain by cloaking. But then, why was he able to sneak away from it back then, but now the ServerBlight is seemingly well aware of cloaked spies? I mean, the answer should be pretty obvious. It's learning at such an exponential rate that it's probably figured out some way to see invisible spies. Now, the last thing I want to point out here is something I feel like could be very easily overlooked, and that's the map. Now, what specifically about the map? Well, it's Dust Bowl. Tell me, do you know any out-of-bounds kill zones on this map? Because I sure don't. For the ServerBlight, this map is practically just shooting fish in a barrel. There is quite literally no way for anyone to be able to escape this map. Or is there? Hey, Vsauce, Marcy here. No, I'm not bringing this bit back. It wasn't funny the first time. Okay, but on a more serious note,
I mean, I found it funny.
Technically at least one way out of the map, but I'll get to that later in the video. Though, actually, now that I think about it, would winning or losing a game lead to a way out? Like, now I'm curious if Cyronix did manage to capture last. Would he have been able to disconnect? Or the same could go for if he managed to hold out for the eternity that's Dust Bowl Part 3. I wonder if maybe the creators will explore this idea in the future. Who knows? Well, speaking of future installments, I think
if they win, I would assume that they do.
Let's move on to the next one. That one being Offline. This episode is actually the second of the 2 installments to make up the technically 7 installments remark I made earlier in the video. Mostly because this was originally a teaser for the as of currently writing the script, latest installment in the series, Reflection. However, this teaser actually does some really nice world building, where we're introduced to a new character named Classic. It appears that the server is a very tight-knit community, where pretty much everyone knows everyone. We see Classic doing his rounds on the server, saying hi to all the regulars and stopping a scout from capping, before he notices one of the regulars, Spoogs, just staring at him from afar. Regardless, he seems to continue doing his rounds, where we see him talking with one of the server regulars who's talking about practically scamming someone. And Classic once again notices Spoogs staring at him, but when he mentions it, the guy Classic was talking to says that Spoogs hasn't been on since yesterday. So Classic decides to pursue Spoogs, and in his pursuit, he sees something. I don't know.
The server blight.
So normally I break
What
down
the
all my theories and
fuck?
details I noticed during this installment, but like, what is there for me to analyze here? I guess the main thing to bring up is really just a map. That being Sawmill, another map with no out-of-bounds areas. It's starting to seem like to me that the server blight is strictly going to maps with no out-of-bounds areas, which is honestly very concerning. Although, what if it's just a map that needs to kill you? If that's the case, then the Sawmills would be a very easy way to game end yourself and escape. However, if it doesn't work like that, then yeah, everyone in this game is screwed. So let's see what happens in the next and final installment for the time being, Reflection. This episode opens seemingly where we left off in Sawmill.
I want to know if you win. Are you able to just like disconnect after that, or like what can you do?
And we see someone join the game who we haven't seen in a very long time, Bradolphin. Yeah,
Bradolphin.
That's right. The spy way back on Thunder Mountain that walked off the cliff.
Why the hell did he come back? He was free.
Here we get faked out a little bit by briefly thinking that the server's empty, until Bradolphin gets suddenly blasted apart by a demo man. And oh my god, ew, this guy's using the dead ringer, ew! Though, honestly, the demo kind of deserved it. He was being a prick for no reason. Much like the past couple of installments in the series, we see that this is a normal game in TF2, where you get to see just how much of a sweatlord Bradolphin is at the spot. Uh-oh.
Oh fuck. You guys can't see it, but it's Headshot Fraudster.
I see we're just getting straight into it then, huh? If you remember, Headshot Fraudster is one of the people that joined the Snowy Coast game right after Aaron left the game. I wonder how long it'll take for the server blight to make itself known. After being such a goddamn sweat and hitting a nasty trick stab, we then see a scout staring at him. Very unsettlingly.
Dead!
Oh, never mind. Just normal TF2 interaction.
Oh
my
God.
god, this guy is such a typical spy man. My blood is boiling just watching this. Anyways, after hitting that trick stab in the demo night, we see the demo from offline again, where he compliments Bradolphin's trick stab. Here, the two have a chill conversation, where Bradolphin tells him about someone who's been messaging him a lot lately, and Classic telling him to just block the guy. After the short conversation, Classic says he's gotta get off, but as expected, he can't log off. And disturbingly, we see a very unsettling zoom out shot where we see a deformed sniper hand slowly reaching over Classic's head. And I don't know why, but something so eerie about the scene for me is just how silent it is when Classic gets grabbed by the sniper. Like, there's no screaming, no cries for help, not even really any sounds of a struggle or rap.
Dude, it evolved to the point where it quieted down the other bodies inside of it, so it could hunt you down in silence. That's fucking scary. Fuck that, dude.
Ragdoll collisions. Of course, after that, Bradolphin runs for it, and all hell starts breaking loose, where we see the server blight attacking various players. Not only that, but we also see a couple familiar names join the game, Gillysuit and Cyrenix. It's honestly kind of freaky that the server blight has now learned how to send individual blight players to a server. Though, why did it send Gillysuit and Cyrenix? You'd think the server blight would have already had everything under control already with Headshot Fraudster, Spoogs, and whoever this medic is. And before you go in the comments and say that this is Matt, it's not, because if you look at their hats, they don't match up. Regardless, we see Bradolphin seemingly have a mini panic attack, where he ends up accidentally letting himself get cornered by an assimilated scout. But before the scout could reach him, Bradolphin is saved last second by none other than Dixalot, better known as Aaron. After saving him, it's revealed that Aaron was the one messaging Bradolphin, and when Bradolphin doesn't seem to understand, he gets reminded of the Thunder Mountain game, which seems to freak him out a bit. Aaron then gives Bradolphin a bit of a pep talk, where he implies he somehow figured out a method to make it out of the map, despite there being no out-of-bounds areas. As they keep moving, Bradolphin looks into some water and notices reflection, which kinda causes him to have a bit of an existential crisis, asking how they can move like they do in real life, though Aaron doesn't have much useful to say in response. Hey, wait a minute, how could Bradolphin see his reflection? TFT doesn't have water reflection mechanics. And, just like that, his supposed reflection's gone. Actually, wait a minute, his reflection didn't even match up with Bradolphin. He has an ambassador, while the reflection has a default revolver. And Bradolphin has whatever the hell this hat's called, while the reflection kinda seems like it's wearing some kind of beret. I could've sworn we've seen this loadout somewhere before. Oh shit. After Bradolphin runs away like a coward, the assimilated Cyrenix runs out of the water towards Aaron.
There he is.
And what? What the fuck? Is it strafing away from his rockets? Well, despite strafing, Aaron's improved his aim a lot since the Snowy Coast game, and shoots Cyronix dead. We then get a shot of Cyronix as Ragdoll, and I know I could totally be reading too much into this again, but it's kinda odd to me how much Cyronix as Ragdoll is posed exactly like how his lifeless body is posed in real life. Could just be a coincidence, or maybe it could mean something. Either way, I'm not really sure. After Aaron deals with Cyronix, he yells at Bradolphin, accidentally calling him Bredophile. And in response, Bradolphin apologizes. It's very apparent that he isn't handling this well and is scared to all high hell right now. Suddenly, Aaron sees a huge sniper hand dragging Cyronix away. And
you gotta get the fuck out of here.
They need to go through mid to get to spawn. And in response, Bradolphin asks something I actually didn't really consider until now. But that's how Aaron's managing to type so quickly, which he responds by saying it's binds. Now, admittedly, I was going to roll with the theory I saw in the comments of this video that Aaron is sort of channeling his bind to the game to speak what he's thinking, but after watching through this again, you can tell what is and isn't a phrase Aaron's bound to his keyboard. The biggest giveaway is the sentence having capitalization and punctuation. So this definitely means that Aaron has more than likely dealt with the server blight so many times at this point that he has a total list of phrases at the ready to save people's lives when he has a run-in. This also more than likely means that he's been actively seeking out the server blight. Once they move to the center of the map with the control point, Bradolphin suggests capping the point, though Aaron also brings up a good point that'd be too slow. And besides, we all remember what happened last time someone tried capping the point against the server blight. Suddenly, the two hear an engineer cry for help, and after a couple moments, we see Ghillie slowly walking towards the two. And attached to him is a forever
Oh my god.
What makes this more unsettling is that it doesn't even seem like the server blight wants to get them here per se. More so terrorize them by showing off its newest victim that it's tormenting. Like, it's not even running at them, just slowly walking at them while smiling.
And smiling.
And this theory of mine, I think, is reinforced when Ghillie stops right in front of a saw blade, where Classic gets constantly shredded by said saw blade. The thing that makes...
But that's the one thing that could get them out of the server and kill them, is the saw. They need to get in front of the saw.
The scene extra chilling is when he starts getting shredded by the saw, Classic's mic turns on, where we can hear the player behind Classic screaming. Realizing the danger they're in, Bradolphin contemplates running out the door, but Aaron has a better but riskier idea, and that's to launch him onto the upper platform with the rocket. And, lucky for Bradolphin, none of them screw it up. Honestly, if I were in this situation, it would not matter who I am, I'd either fuck up the aiming of the rocket, or
real
fuck
shit.
up the crouch jump.
I would do
good
that
on
too.
them for not fumbling there. Once they both make it up, the duo make a mad dash for spawn, until they notice something lurking around the corner, so they quickly divert their path. And once they're in a relatively safe spot, they have a conversation about the server blight and the people it's assimilated. Once Aaron mentions the assimilation of Matt, Bradolphin drops a total bombshell on Aaron. That being his best friend was in the Thunder Mountain game with them. And his name? Direction Z. Aaron ends up bold-faced lying to Bradolphin when he gets asked if he's seen Direction Z, saying he hasn't seen him, even though he's the one who doomed Direction Z by sniping him, and saw Matt get assimilated by him. Suddenly, their conversation gets interrupted when they hear footsteps right above them. And that's when Bradolphin seems to hatch a plan. He wants Aaron to shoot him so he respawns back at Blue Team spawn. So, following his request, Aaron shoots Bradolphin with his reserve shooter. However, this may have been a huge mistake, because right after, an assimilate pyro starts reaching down, either to get Bradolphin's body, or to get Aaron now that he's isolated. However, we see what Bradolphin's real plan was, and we see how him being a fat fucking spy main pays off, where we discover he was using a dead ringer the whole time. And catching the assimilate pyro off guard, he domes him with—
What a fucking Chad, dude, oh my god.
His ambassador. Now that the two are temporarily safe, Aaron reveals his plan to Bradolphin on how to get out, and that's going soldier and launching his ragdoll out of the map. So there is a way to escape the server blight without using an outbounds kill zone. Suddenly, their conversation gets cut short again, this time with Classic seemingly separated from Ghillie Suit, groaning into his mic, watching the two from afar. Interestingly enough, once Bradolphin's dead ringer ragdoll disappears, Classic decides to walk away. It's almost like the server blight's drawn to ragdolls of unassimilated players. After Bradolphin makes it back to Aaron as a soldier now, Aaron reiterates his instructions, emphasizing that he should not give himself when trying to get out. So, with that, Bradolphin starts getting himself low in health, and once he's low enough, he gets a go-ahead from Aaron. So, he runs towards the fence, and he gives himself. Because of this massive fuck-up, the giant sniper starts making his way to them, and we get to see just how goddamn gargantuan the sniper is.
Oh my god.
Thankfully, Bradolphin just in the nick of time manages to get it right the second time around, and makes it out of bounds while Aaron kills the sniper. And once Bradolphin disconnects, Aaron notices the hand inside the sniper's mouth stop moving, and also sees Ghillie Suit watching him from afar. After the two share a rivalrous look, Aaron then also launches himself out of bounds. Once the scene cuts to black, we see a Steam message conversation between the two survivors, where Aaron tries to recruit Bradolphin into stopping the server blight. However, despite wanting to see his friend again, Bradolphin declines the request, and demands—
Pretty fucking smart. I can't go back, please don't message me again. No, understandable, have a good day.
that Aaron never messaged him again. We then see a shot of Aaron in real life, seeming to have a breakdown after getting shut down like this. The camera then pans to his phone, where we see that Aaron has hopelessly texted and called Matt several times to no avail. Also, something I think is worth noting here is that there's a book next to Aaron's phone called Dark Imperium Godblight. Now, I feel like this holds some sort of significance to the overarching story somehow, as the word Godblight really stands out to me. After doing some quick research, this is a Warhammer 40k book.
Ooh.
Now, sadly, I never played Warhammer 40k, much less read any of the Warhammer books. And as awesome as it would be for me to go the extra length to read this book to find its connection to the video, I'm just not gonna do that. However, if any of you have read the book or are familiar with Warhammer 40k, please enlighten me on if this book holds any relevance to the Serverblight lore, or if it's just me focusing way too much on decoration. Either way,
it probably does.
Out that is definitely not me harping on something that may or may not be there, is a shot that zooms out on Aaron quietly sobbing, where we see an unmistakable shadow of an arm behind him, meaning the Serverblight is definitely still keeping an eye on him. Then, the scene
he's right behind me.
However, there's actually one last thing left that I feel like many people miss because they assume the video's over. Do you remember way back at the start of this installment, when Berdolphin trick stabbed the soldier, and there's that scout that killbinded right after seeing that happen? Well, it turns out that scout, Sailorman, managed to survive the massacre that took place on Sawmill. And we actually see this absolute rat gamer make it to spawn safely, switch to soldier, and launch himself out of the map. I'm honestly hoping that maybe we'll see
Wait, so this motherfucker also has dealt with the Blight before.
Soldier, and there's that scout that killbinded right after seeing that happen? Well, it turns out that scout, Sailorman, managed to survive the massacre that took place on Sawmill. And we actually see this absolute rat gamer make it to spawn safely, switch to soldier, and launch himself out of the map. I'm honestly hoping that maybe we'll see Sailorman show up later in the series. And with that, the video ends. What?
So Sailorman has dealt with the Blight, because how would he know to go out of bounds? Unless he overheard them talking about the only way to get out of here is to go out of bounds. That's kind of weird. Either Sailorman overheard them and did exactly what they said, or he has dealt with the server blight before.
Well, this installment was incredibly loaded, and there's a lot for us to analyze and break down for this as of now final installment of the series. Honestly, I don't even know where to start with my analysis. So let's start in chronological order here, starting with Headshot Fraudster joining the game. Now, you might not notice it, but this is a very subtle but also very disturbing detail about how the server blight's evolving. As this time, it's a player that was part of the central mass of the server blight joining the game on its own, and not someone like Scuba Master who's technically never part of the main mass. And how do I know that Headshot Fraudster was a part of the central mass? Well, let's look all the way back at the Puppet creepypasta. Here, we came to the conclusion that the story was from the perspective of Headshot Fraudster. And if you're paying attention, the sniper in Reflection reinforces the idea that the sniper in Puppet was Headshot Fraudster, as both this sniper and the sniper inside the server blight are both wearing the same outfits.
Ooh.
Although it might be hard to notice because unfortunately he just wears a very generic looking jacket. But when we compare the shoulders and zipper thing both the snipers have, they both seem to line up. And actually, speaking of Scuba Master, I know it might seem a bit odd to bring him up again since he doesn't even show up here, but I actually have a bit of a theory about the first assimilated players to join the server. We know the Headshot Fraudster was the first assimilated player to join the server, and before you even think about typing in the comments, but what about Spoogs? In the teaser, Spoogs is clearly assimilated. And to that I say, maybe that was the initial plan, but I feel like part of Offline isn't canon. And the biggest reason I believe that is Classic's reaction to seeing something not shown to the viewers. If it was canon, then it's really weird how casual and chill he is when interacting with Berdolphin. So, with that out of the way, we know the Headshot Fraudster was the first assimilated player to join the server. And even though we've seen how deformed some of the assimilated players can be, it's a bit unusual just how big Headshot Fraudster is. Now, what does this have to do with Scuba Master? Well, back in the installment titled Assimilation, when Scuba Master was slowly emerging from spawn, look how fucking gigantic he is. Now, sure, we don't get to see his full body, but if just the size of his head and hands are any sort of indication of how big his full body is, he's probably massive. Now, seeing as relevant common traits between these two are that they're the first assimilated players in these servers, and that they're unusually gigantic, then I feel like there has to be some correlation there with them being the first ones on the server and their size. Now, as to why they're so large, your guess is as good as mine.
They're like, don't give it, immediately gives it.
Then either A, they're huge like this to sort of imitate the central server blight mass that we see on Thunder Mountain and Snowy Coast, or B, their size lets them collect dead bodies so they can, quote, fix them, as we see with Headshot Fraudster grabbing Cyronix, or hell, even the central mass stopping his pursuit of Aaron and Matt to drag away the Gibbs of the Demo Man. But, I don't know.
I feel bad for Aaron, though.
On that idea. What do you guys think? Now, something else I want to talk about is the server blight learning more how to torment its victims, as well as it learning to communicate more. Well, sort of. We can totally see both instances of this during the scenes with Classic in them. When it comes to ServerBlight learning to torment its victims more, I feel like it's very apparent what I mean by that. We already know from the puppet creepypasta that all the victims are conscious. In the case of Classic, I'd even go as far as saying that at least during the Sawblade scene, he wasn't even fully assimilated. Almost like Ghillie fused into his body so they couldn't run away. Honestly, I feel really terrible for Classic. Like, he genuinely seemed like a nice guy, but now he's just being eternally tormented. If the puppet creepypasta is anything to go off of, the cause for the screens that assimilate players is some sort of burning sensation of millions of pixels all at once. And the fact that Classic is just non-stop screaming, I can only imagine that the ServerBlight is just making him feel continuous pain. Now, as for what I meant when I said that it's learning to communicate more, we see something that we haven't seen before. And that's a player with a mic that's been assimilated, making noises post-assimilation that they haven't uttered prior to them getting taken. Though, for what reason the ServerBlight has for having Classic groaning into his microphone, I'm not really sure. Unless, of course, it's not the ServerBlight doing that and it's Classic resisting and trying to communicate. Now, something else I want to bring up is something that I feel like is a bit of an elephant in the room. And that's of course a very apparent rivalry between the ServerBlight and Aaron. At this point, Aaron has managed to evade the ServerBlight at the very least 2 times now. Though it's more than—
well, 3 now, but it's looking like it probably hates Aaron for the sole fact that he got away. He's the one that got away, and he keeps helping people getting away. All because of one was it a mechanic? There's one the guy he keeps like tormenting him with. Is like for the sole fact that he keeps using the same guy he was tormenting, the same guy that he assimilated into his body, and using that body in front of Dixalot or Aaron, because that's the first person that he saw get assimilated, and he hates the fact that he's helping people escape. That's the main thing I was trying to get at. The ServerBlight hates the fact that Aaron is helping people escape because it wants to be whatever the fuck it wants to be. It wants to be like this big, enormous monster, this amalgamation just torturing people. I don't know why. I don't know how it's doing it, but this is really good. This is really, really good.
Likely they've evaded much more than just 2 times at this point. And
yeah,
now, it seems like the ServerBlight prefers to torment Aaron, sort of like playing with its food. That's almost definitely why—
also, I realized my mistake with that. If you kill them, they can still get your body. It doesn't matter if you die. You have to be out of bounds, or else your body will be assimilated. Meaning, or i.e. you as well. Like, so say that you do kill yourself in the game, and then you're able to disconnect. That does not mean you're free. If it grabs your body, it most likely will. You most likely will be assimilated to them and die in the real world. So you have to go into out of bounds, because even if it's this big old monster thing, if it goes out of bounds, it will die. So I think the only way to really kill it for a little bit is to get it out of bounds, because I don't think this thing can respawn.
Had Ghillie join the game, because what's probably happening is Aaron's been following the ServerBlight around.
That, or I could be wrong.
The ServerBlight more than likely knew they'd be joining soon, so it sent Ghillie, someone that knew Aaron would recognize. Though, the only odd thing to me is, if the ServerBlight likes to torment Aaron, why hasn't it sent the assimilated Matt after Aaron yet? We can infer from Aaron's Steam conversation with Berdolphin that he hasn't seen Matt since the Snowy Coast incident. So that could mean the ServerBlight simply just waiting for the perfect moment to send Matt to completely break Aaron's spirit and resolve. I'm almost certain that's going to be a major plot point in a future installment. I wonder how the creators are going to handle it, because it could honestly go either way. Either Aaron overcomes his feelings and successfully fights the assimilated Matt, who would more than likely be trying emotional manipulation tactics during this fight, or Aaron would freeze up and get assimilated. Honestly, something else I could see happening in the future would be Aaron doing his rounds trying to save players, and once he sees the assimilated Matt, he hesitates, leading to the people he tries saving to get assimilated. And while we're on the topic of Eren, I'd like to bring up the shadow we saw behind him. Now, there's absolutely no doubt about it. This is 100% the shadow of an arm. More specifically, I'm pretty sure this is the arm of a scout. Now, we could interpret this in two ways. The first way is much more simple, and that's that this is simply just a manifestation of the Serverblight in the real world, watching Eren. Now, the other way we can interpret this is that it's a premonition of Eren's fate. What do I mean by that? Well, as we see in Cyrex, the one we saw staying behind him before he got assimilated was a heavy. And sure, he technically got assimilated by several players at once, but the main player of note in this episode was Scuba Master, who's a heavy. So if we're sticking with this idea that whoever assimilates you is the merc that gets you in real life, then that might mean that whoever's the one that gets Eren will be a scout. Now, we don't know that many scouts have been assimilated into the Serverblight, except Direction Z. Honestly, it'll be a little bit poetic irony if Direction Z, a player who was ultimately doomed by Eren, ends up dooming Eren to the exact same fate. But this is total speculation. Now, something I want to touch back up upon is actually Ghillie Suit. Now, again, this is total speculation, and that's purely because Ghillie Suit seems to be a one-of-a-kind, so I'm not really able to figure out any sort of commonality. With that said, I feel like there has to be some sort of correlation between the Serverblight assimilating a dead player and how weirdly sadistic Ghillie Suit is. Truth be told, I don't even know if Ghillie Suit did get assimilated when he was dead. But I feel like back in the empty server, there's enough time between the Serverblight chasing Eren up the stairs and then jumping out the window to assimilate Ghillie Suit's dead body.
I'm pretty sure he did.
If we're assuming the Serverblight did assimilate Ghillie Suit's dead body, then I almost want to say that Ghillie Suit's more like an empty husk that the Serverblight can manipulate however it pleases. We see in Migration that it wasn't even Ghillie Suit that was hitting his head on the floor, but rather it was the central mass that was doing it. Now, the reason why I think this theory might be the case is because of how the Serverblight reacted to Brodolphin's dead ringer corpse. It's like the moment the body was on the ground and vulnerable, the assimilated pirate started reaching out, and Classic walked out to investigate. But the moment his body despawned, Classic walked away. Same goes for when Brodolphin accidentally gibbed himself. Headshot Fraudster immediately started making a beeline for his blasted apart body. It's almost like the Serverblight prefers getting these dead bodies. Perhaps because it gives it a little bit more autonomy with the bodies it assimilates. Actually, yeah. Come to think of it, the Serverblight always repeats phrases it's heard, except for the aforementioned Classic vocalizations and Ghillie Suit saying, "I'm having so much fun." Am I cooking with this theory or what? Now, the last thing I want to talk about is something smaller, but it also opens the door for some major speculation, and that's the map they're on. So it's very apparent now that the Serverblight's only going to servers without any out-of-bounds kill zones, so it practically guarantees it'll assimilate everyone in the match. However, it seems like its strategy is still flawed, because as Eren displayed, there's still ways to get out. And as we know, the Serverblight's learning. So does this mean the Serverblight's just going to target servers without any out-of-bounds areas? Like, what if it targets games on maps like Turbine? Or, I don't know, like Junction? Who the hell plays on Junction? Both of these maps are completely indoors, and there's no out-of-bounds areas. So what happens if the Serverblight joins on one of these servers? Would the only way to escape being to finish the round? Or, I doubt the creators will explore this because it's more of an unserious map, but we know the Serverblight only attacks community servers, at least for the time being. So what if it were to attack a trade server, like Trade Plaza? That's another map without any out-of-bounds areas, and there's no way to win on this map, or hell, even hide from the Serverblight on either. Assuming the creators don't explore the idea of the Serverblight targeting a Trade Plaza server, let's just chalk it up to the Serverblight feeling like it'd be too easy. And that's all I really have to say about the series for the time being. Or at least, that's what I would have said if the creators didn't release a new episode while the creators recording voiceovers for this video! Yeah, that's right. We actually have an 8th video summarized and analyzed.
Let's go!
So buckle in while I break down awareness.
I'm so glad. This is really good, dude.
Usual with a normal TF2 game on, surprisingly, Double Cross.
Postra.
So I guess it makes my theory about the Serverblight targeting maps with no out-of-bounds kill zones wrong. Here we're introduced to one of our protagonists.
VTuber Physics Engine. Good name. I have physics.
A heavy who sounds, frankly, high off his ass, named Grey Matter. It ends up being revealed that he's helping teach his friend Nexus how to play TF2. And we totally get faked out by being made to think that Nexus is part of the Serverblight. However, he just doesn't know how to use voice chat. It also ends up being revealed that they're playing with a third friend, that being a soldier named God's God. That is going to be a painful name for me to repeat. So, in usual Serverblight fashion, we see an intense firefight, where God's God and Grey Matter encourages Nexus to run at the Heavy and blast him, which, shockingly, works. God damn, this Heavy sucks. Though, I think the thing that really gobsmacked me is the fact that Grey Matter really managed to sneak behind the Heavy and kill their medic using the fucking Warrior Spirit. Who the hell uses the Warrior Spirit? After winning that 2v3, Nexus gets taught how to taunt, and we hear God's God say something that I feel like is going to be important, and that's...
Taunting's how you act friendly in TF2.
Or shit on people.
After that lesson in taunts, they head on over to the sewers, but Nexus hurts himself, so he gets a health pack, and that's when he's put face to face with a soldier on his team. Thinking he wanted the health pack, Nexus banters at him and then does a scout melee taunt. And in response, hilariously but also very eerily, the soldier does the exact same taunt back at him. Despite Nexus being put off by this, God's God writes it off as a game being buggy, which is pretty fair. I've definitely seen my own fair share of weird-ass bugs in the game like that. Once in the sewers, the friends give Nexus a pep talk on how to get the intel on this map, though it's pretty bad advice. And when they make it out of the sewers, the blue team spawn is weirdly deserted. That's when God's God drops a piece of information that to most people means nothing, but to keen viewers like myself, is actually fucking horrifying.
Yeah, dude, it's
that this is a game of casual. But what's so terrifying about that, you might be asking? Well, up until this point, it's been implied that the ServeBlight exclusively targets community servers. But now, it's going after casual servers, where there's a lot more people for the ServeBlight to assimilate. Suddenly, an enemy soldier barrels down the stairs looking horrified, and after sharing a look with the friends, he starts firing at them, ultimately killing Grey Matter before Nexus could kill him. Despite being one man down, they decide to keep moving to the blue team intel, and that's when—
Oh, fuck, dude, I think he was trying to save him in the worst possible way.
Agreed with the sight of a friendly spy doing the high-five taunt. Though, as the two approach him, we see the spy's grin widen very subtly. Also, strangely, God's God isn't able to taunt with the spy. While God's God keeps trying to taunt with the spy to no avail, Nexus picks up the intel, and when he steps outside, he finally sees it. A giant amalgamated mass of blue team players and that one red soldier that taunted back at Nexus. Now, I might be totally reading too much into this, but it almost seems like the soldier's helping Nexus. The way he's posed and is the only red team player in the mass makes it almost look like he's restraining the blue team players in his mass. I'll explain a bit more why I feel this way later. After seeing this massive assimilated players, Nexus in a panicked state runs back to God's God and tells him they've got to go back to spawn. And that's when the spy's smile drops, looking almost sad or disappointed. And that's when the spy reveals that he's part of the server he's chasing to. Though, God's God blows him up pretty easily.
Good.
Once the two make it to the bridge, they reflect on what just happened. And that's when Nexus discovers he can't disconnect. But instead of saying the usual, "Why can't I disconnect?" he says something much more ominous and disturbing. And that's that he's seen this before. What the fuck do you mean you've seen this before? And God's God has the exact same reaction I think most of us have after hearing that. And that's just asking, what? But before Nexus can explain, he notices a Heavy's hand wrapped around his friend's foot. And God's God says one of the most heartbreaking things I think I've ever heard in the series so far.
I just wanted you guys to be friends.
Now alone, Nexus makes him mad.
Is this motherfucker... Did the ServerbLight start recruiting people? Is it using people to lure more people?
Dash back to spawn to capture the intel. However, he stops underneath the spawn room, and that's when he hears Grey Matter talking to him. However, by now, after everything we see in this series, it's pretty clear this isn't Grey Matter anymore.
Nope.
And curiously, the entire time, his face is hidden. Feeling very suspicious about this whole situation, Nexus starts to back off, and that's when the ServeBlight drops the act. We then hear the screams of the main master of the ServeBlight coming from Red Team spawn, and that's when Nexus starts rushing to the intel room. However, the ServeBlight also pursues him, chasing after him from above, trying to cut him off from getting to the intel room. Though, I think because of its sheer mass, it wasn't able to fit through the upstairs door in time, and Nexus dives into the capture zone, winning the game for the team. Nexus then disconnects. However, before the episode ends, we see maybe one of the biggest bombshells in the series that we've seen so far. Every player respawns as seemingly normal again. The episode then ends with a shot zooming out of the red base as two players join the game. Okay, Jesus Christ.
Okay, so it is confirmed that you can, if you win the game, you can disconnect. But that also means that it already got its friends and pretended to be him. And I think that gunner, the Heavy, like you said, was using its body mass to like hold him back. So he had enough time to escape. Thankfully, he did. Dude, this is fucking insane.
Christ, this episode seriously flipped everything I thought I knew about the series right on its head. Where do I even start with this? I guess we could start with this weird-ass soldier and spy. See, these two assimilated players stand out a lot to me. It's not just because they've learned how to taunt, presumably from these three friends, which by itself has some pretty disturbing implications. But no, it seems like these two are genuinely friendly assimilated players. But hold on, let me cook. Now, you're probably wondering how I even know that they're friendly, and not just manipulating these guys like the ServeBlight always does. Well, let's start with the soldier. I mentioned it earlier and I'll mention it again. When Nexus sees all these assimilated blue team players, we can see that the only red player in this mass is a soldier. Not only that, but it seems like he's also restraining all the assimilated blue team players. If we really stop and take a good look at this writhing mass of players, we can see that every single blue team player is either fused with the soldier or being blocked by the soldier. And I feel like it's also worth noting that the soldier made no effort to catch Nexus during their several second long standoff.
Thank God.
Only making a half-assed attempt to grab him once he runs off. Now, as we know from the puppet creepypasta, these
I believe that he... Okay, so now that he said that, I believe that the reason he made that half-assed attempt was to scare him enough to run. So it really was trying to help him. Oh, dude, that's sad.
assimilated players are aware of everything, and even make futile attempts to resist. So what if the soldier is using whatever little bit of willpower he has left to try and save Nexus from an overwhelming horde of blue team players? It's also worth knowing the title of this installment when talking about this theory of mine. As we see with the last episode, Reflection, these titles can sometimes have a double meaning. With Reflection, it's both literally referring to the fake reflection Bradolphin saw, while also referring to how Aaron and Bradolphin reflect on the run-ins with the Server Blight. As for this installment, I feel like awareness both refers to Nexus's previous awareness of the Server Blight, but also the awareness the assimilated players have of their current situation. So what does any of this have to do with the spy? Well, I feel like the spy, much like the soldier, was resisting in his own strange way. See, for most viewers, the go-to thought when it comes to the spy is probably just, yeah, this is obviously a trap. Except, if it was a trap, it could have had such an easy time assimilating God's God when Nexus was getting the intel and looking at the amalgamation
honestly,
with the team. This could be a stretch, and maybe the spy really was trying to deceive them, but we can see how suddenly the spy seemed to be happy that the two are being friendly, and God's God was trying to high-five him. And we can also see that the moment Nexus started freaking out, the spy looks sad and disappointed. Like he didn't want to attack them, but he has to. We know from the puppet creepypasta that after getting assimilated, you seem to lose a lot of your memories. And
that's true. You don't really remember who you are afterwards. You kind of just exist in like this weird hive mind. Like being tortured forever. And honestly, that's genuinely horrifying to think about.
Maybe after God's God explained that taunting is a sign of being friendly, the assimilated players may have remembered some aspect of their humanity that they'd forgotten, thus maybe explaining why the spy and soldier were strangely so docile towards these guys. Again though, there's a very good chance I'm reading way too deep into this, and it's simply the Server Blight just fucking with these guys. Regardless of if these assimilated players are semi-friendly or not, it should still be seen as pretty alarming that the Server Blight has learned how to taunt. During the standoff with the soldier on the lower bridge, you can see the gears in the Server Blight's head turning as it tries to taunt for the first time. Like, holy shit, as a side note, seeing the soldier do the scout melee taunt was genuinely so unsettling that, like, all I could do when I saw it for the first time was just laugh in pure discomfort. Now, I'd like to go back to what Nexus said about having seen this before, which is, like, extremely fucking ominous, given that he just never elaborates on what he means by that. I've got two main theories about this, though I feel like one is way more likely than the other. The first, less likely theory is that he's seen the Server Blight in a YouTube video that a survivor of the Server Blight recorded and uploaded in universe. However, I feel like this theory is less likely, mostly due to the fact that if he's seen videos like that, he'd probably never want to play TF2. Or at the very least, it means he's seen TF2 content before, which means he wouldn't be the complete noob that he's portrayed as being in this video. So then, as for my second theory, it's that the Server Blight is not a TF2 exclusive thing. Nexus makes it pretty clear that he's not much of a gamer. However, the one game he states a couple times he plays and has extensive—
Wait. Dude, if that's true, that is... Dude, if that is true, how many other Server Blights are there? If it's not just in TF2, how many other Server Blights are there? No, dude, fuck.
The knowledge of is Minecraft. Up until this point, we've all been under the impression that the Server Blight was a TF2 exclusive thing, which, until now, we can infer it originated from TF2. However, now that we know it didn't necessarily originate from TF2, makes the Server Blight way more disturbing and ambiguous. However, it does also open the door to a new theory I have. Although the Server Blight didn't originate from inside TF2, what we do know is that the TF2 Server Blight originated from a community server. Now, if Nexus were to encounter the Server Blight in Minecraft 2, then that probably means it happened in a game of multiplayer. And unlike TF2, there's not really such thing as an official dedicated server in Minecraft. Pretty much every server in Minecraft runs off some kind of hosting service. See where I'm going with this? Now, let me cook here. but maybe the origin of the server blight comes from some sketchy-ass server hosting site that offers cheap servers for games including Minecraft and TF2, and that's how the server blight gets more people. I just know I'm cooking with this theory. Episode 9 of server blight in Minecraft confirmed? Now, there's one last thing I want to talk about before I wrap things up, and that's of course the ending. Obviously, the ending has some insane fucking implications, so let's discuss it. Throughout the entire series, it's been shown that the only way to escape the server blight is dying somewhere the server blight isn't able to get you. However, we've never seen what happens when a round is completed. We've seen people like Cyronix attempt to win the game, but end up getting assimilate before being able to cap. However, in this installment, we can see that winning is one of the conditions that allows you to disconnect.
Thank God.
So, the more intriguing thing about it is that it seemingly fixes everyone. However, that raises a huge question for me. Are these players themselves anymore? I know my theories about the series seem to be erring more towards the side of optimism, such as a theory about the series assimilate.
It does fix everybody. So I wonder, does that also destroy the server blight in that part of the server? I mean, it's possible. I don't know. So you finish the game and it resets everything, but does that mean that he killed the server blight somehow? Like, not like this part of the server blight, not the server blight in general, in whole. I don't know.
This episode, but it should be noted that the series is pretty dark and depressing. And it seems like there's rarely many happy endings in the series, if any at all. So, in other words, I feel like it'd be a little too optimistic for me to say that these, quote, fixed players are really fixed. The main reason why I think that is, well, we saw Cyronix's dead body.
Yeah.
I just don't think his soul's gonna get sucked back into his body Ermac style. So I'm fairly certain all these assimilated players are unfortunately dead as hell. So then there's really just three possibilities of what could have happened to all these players that are part of the central mass. The first one being that all winning the game did was just separate all the pieces of central mass. And it can just put itself back together.
That too,
The second one
actually.
being that it killed the server blight in the server. And now all these players are just stuck inside the game forever. The last one being a variation
That
of
would be
the
very
possibility.
sad.
And that's if both the server blight and the players die, leaving all these player models behind to sort of like empty husks. Holy shit, wait, what? This is like how the creators go about explaining, like, why literally every single TF2 game, there's like 3 statues just chilling in Spawn. What if, like, in a future installment, we see the reactions of 2 players that joined the game at the end of this episode, and they're all just like, why the fuck is everyone AFK? Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and find out.
Dude, this is so good.
The creators end up taking the series in, as there's truly an endless amount of possibilities on where the story can go. There's just so many questions that still need to be answered. Do you agree with my theories? Was I cooking? Or was I just harping on absolutely nothing this whole video?
Dude,
Tell me your thoughts and theories in the comments down below. And once again, show the creators of the series 2 idiot Germans lots of love and support. They're insanely talented. Links to their
Dude,
channel
oh
and
my
Swipe Like series are in
God.
the description down below. Like, not doing an insane amount of glazing again, but their skills with SFM and general cinematography are extremely impressive to me. Like, holy. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching if you still are, and until next time.
bro, that was so good. Dude, that was so good. Oh my God. I got so invested into it. I'm like, wait, this is actually getting like super awesome. I kind of want to get into it even more. And he has another video that is also TF2, so I don't know. Maybe we'll watch that next. Oh, dude, this is so good. This was so good. Go watch him. Go check out Marcelame and this original video. Also, go check out what was it? 2 Idiot Germans that did the. Go check out the original SFM. I'll put that in the description as well. This was fucking amazing. Oh my God, that was so good.